What is going on, Badger fam? It is a free-form Friday. Whatever y'all want to talk about. Basketball, football, we got call-ins, we got people in the queue already. We got Justin here. Let's just chop it up. Let's build some community and figure out where we're all at today. Happy Friday. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? We got Justin here. We're talking about the football game still, the fallout from the 24/7 game. We got Justin here to give his piece. Evan, why do I let this program? Something is in the queue. Wisconsin recruiting's in the queue. So we got several people who are going to call in. Again, this is a live call-in show. If you want to jump on, give your piece. If you want to vent, here are the only rules. We always have to throw these out there. You got to have your camera on before I let you come on the show. So make sure you're not like some type of rally that I can't have on this show, or you're at a strip club or whatever it is. You gotta have your camera on. I just got to know where you're at, and then you got to at least be mostly clothed, and then mostly no cussing.
Listen, I think when we go to mostly, Caleb's the only person that's allowed to be it because he's now shirtless. Caleb. But everyone else, let's just stay clothed, all right?
So
we're
Evan,
adults here.
Brett, Brian, two Brians, a Brett. So we're going to get to everybody. When you came in, try to keep it around 5 minutes or so, just because we have a bunch of people in the queue today. But I also want to kick it to you, Justin, to start. I already kind of said my piece, what I have to say to some degree. Where are you at, man?
Well, it's pretty simple to me. Like, I know people are going to sit there and say it's the players are a problem or whatever. Like, I was talking to you after the game, and it's my perspective on this is pretty simple. Like, whatever you want to say about the pieces that are available there, we're not remotely maximizing what we have. Like, nothing seems cohesive in terms of like everyone's working towards a common goal and everyone seems locked in and working in the same direction. And this team's just not getting or didn't get better during the season at all. Like, the same issues that we'd had all season never seemed to get better. We didn't seem to try anything new. Like, when things weren't working, it was just like we were hell-bent on trying to make it work the way it was. And, like, I look at that, and it's like, you have to make changes. Like, I know from a coaching staff standpoint, I don't know how you felt about it, but I always felt this way. I felt like there were situations where I just think Fickell didn't want to have to make a choice on it because it was people that he'd been working with for a very long time and experienced success with. So there was a certain level of rope. I think we're to the point now where that rope is gone and you have to look at it and be like, I'm coaching for my career now, because if this blows up, like, I may be unhireable if this really goes negative the next year. Like, I'm not saying he won't get a job. He'll probably find something in like MAC or whatever level, but it's going to be a while before somebody will touch him at a power forward level, if ever again, if this doesn't get better. And right now, I think we agree he has to make a really good hire on the offensive side of the ball, but I think he has to make a really good hire on the defensive side of the ball. The biggest struggle I had with Tressel this year is it never seemed like he was willing to give up on what he wanted to do from a schematic standpoint in order to just make do with what he had. Like, we talked about the two gap and stuff like that, and going back to more of a Leonard approach on defense, just to try and be more effective in general, even if it's just against the run, and you're freeing up linebackers a little bit more. I think that's where you have to go now. Like, you just clearly don't have the defensive line talent and depth to be able to play a one-gap scheme and be disruptive enough to be able to make plays. You have got to switch back to a scheme that allows you to at least free up your linebackers to flow, because right now nobody's getting any penetration, and it shows. Like, we have a legitimate chance, I think, at finishing dead last in the country in tackles for loss. Like, think of where we've fallen from where Jim Leonard's defenses were. We were probably, top 10, top 15 in that category?
Out of 1 year. There was one kind of year, but yeah, they were consistently near the top of that. But again, much better talent, though. That's a wheel we continue to go around and round on. But let's take a break there, because I want to start getting some of these people in, then we'll come back and forth with your thoughts on the game, too, because I know you got more to say here. Let's get Evan in first. You were first in the queue. Again, if you guys want to join on, we're just going to cycle through, but this is your forum, man. Evan, let me pop you up here. What's going on, brother? Where you at?
Hey, just hanging out at home tonight.
Not a bad thing to do. How's your Thanksgiving?
It's been all right. Just eating some pecan pie to drown the sorrows from today.
Quality choice.
Yeah, give us your take, man. Give us your
JD
take
from the Discord would be happy with that choice.
Oh,
Yeah,
man. I'll be honest with you guys. I didn't watch the game today. Well, I had to work part of the day. But I knew what was going to happen before it even happened. I'm a loyal fan, but I just couldn't do it. I went to the Nebraska game a week before, and I just saw absolutely no heart out there, especially on defense. I saw some on offense, but it was depressing.
And I think that you're right there. I think that's part of the issue that I have with this is watching it. It's like, if you have guys that aren't showing you the passion and level of effort on the field, then try something. Like, I don't care. The young guys are going to make mistakes. If they play hard, I don't care. Like, I can live with a guy playing hard and not being perfect, but I want to see the effort because that's where your leadership comes from. And if you have guys that are mailing it in, that's on you as a coach that you're letting that slide. That's an accountability issue, and that's a problem with you as a coach not taking that leadership role and being like, I'm accepting this level of quality. And that's what it feels like to a point this season.
I think it's really quick. It's interesting to me too. One thing we've talked about a lot on this show is there's a point where, and I think it's different for every fan, but there's a point where apathy starts to kick in, right? And I even felt it a little bit in this game. I was just like, we just got to get this season over with. And I'd never felt like that in a Badger football season before, ever. And it felt like that this year. I think it's a good point you bring up, man. Give me your final thought, just optimism on Fickell going forward.
Yeah, there was this one other thing I just wanted to add. So, like, on the big board, the scoreboard at the Nebraska game, they had, like, a leaderboard of, like, the top defensive team stats, right? And there was probably a half a dozen of them. And we aren't on a single one. And it's just, I mean, my Nebraska buddy that I went with, like, you guys aren't on the leaderboard for a single stat up there. And it's just, like, you're talking about tackles for loss. That's a prime example. It's just, if
prior to that Nebraska game, we were ranked 127th in the country.
Yes. It's ridiculous. We can be on one of them. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess my one final question is this a scheme thing or, with a different era, like the portal's huge. And I think we can get ourselves out of this rut with this new portal. Like, I think we can get out of this rut, but I just think that we've been missing on a lot of these portal guys, especially at quarterback. In my opinion, we're 0 for 3 on that. But on defense, too, with these linebackers and everything else, and the defensive line is so thin. But, like, we got to hit on some of these portal guys, and I don't know if it's a scheme thing or a portal thing. I don't know. What you guys think?
Justin and I have gone back and forth on this a lot. I think we both think it's both to some degree, right? There's scheme issues, there's talent issues.
Well, you say we have to be much better in our evaluations out of the portal. Like, they've been terrible, I think, but also I think there is some truth to the idea that the players you're getting are pretty toxic that are coming in. Like, you're not getting quality players. I think my opinion on that is you should chase lower level guys. I don't want Pius to necessarily sour you on the idea of it, but if somebody's looking for a bigger stage for more to show that what their ability is to get to the NFL, I'm okay with a guy like that that's coming up from a lower like MAC level or whatever to prove themselves at this level, because they're not necessarily going to be a poor culture fit or have an attitude. I think I'm starting to be very out on guys coming from any of the high level programs and guys that seem like they're kind of malcontents coming from like other Big Ten or whatever programs, because it just seems like those guys just don't want to put the effort in and want it handed to them.
Evan, man, I appreciate it, brother. Keep going on. Eat some more pie. We're going to the next.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
No, appreciate you, brother. We're going to get, why do I let this program cause me to drink? I think that's the username, right?
Yeah, pretty close. Yep. Fellas, I appreciate the shows and the rants. Really, really do love it. I'm a Badger guy at heart. It's interesting when we think about it. I'm 34, so my Badger era is, the Miami Sports Bowl win in like 09,
Okay.
and then really taking off at the Rose Bowls after that. So, I kind of think about like in my generation is, you got to be winning the Big Ten West. You've got to be, chasing the dream. And right now it just is like, what do we care about? But my thing I wanted to say was I was listening to the post game comments, from the people they interviewed, and so many of them spoke so highly of Fickell. And I think there's something to that. And I couldn't help but wonder and think, is it just that the guys that have the heart and have it and want to be there just aren't physically ready? Football's a rough sport, man. And you can't just put out some, 20, 21-year-old kids sometimes if they're not physically ready. I feel like the guys that really, really want to be there are just not physically ready to play. So that's why you have to keep trotting out the guys that are there, right? To me, there's no other rationale for the same comments, the same speech about, wanting it and we have to come ready to play. And then guys just aren't doing it. I just think the guys who want it aren't ready.
I personally feel like we're missing some of that I guess you'd call them dudes leadership out on the field. Like, I think if you're a coach, you can throw it out there as much as you want to try and fire guys up and get guys ready, motivated. Realistically, you still need to have like 2 or 3 guys on the field that are kind of the drill sergeants that are like keeping guys in line and kind of keeping them locked in. I don't think this team has any of those guys. I realistically look at it like Wohler would be one.
Yeah.
Other than Wohler, I don't know if there's anybody that I look at and say that's a guy out there that's trying to right the ship or keep people like focused.
I mean, I would say it's hard to know for sure, right? Like, I don't want to paint everybody as a broad.
Like, I don't want to be negative on guys, but there seems like a lack of just guys selling out on the field. Like, there's only a couple guys I look at. Like, Tackett's got some of that when I watch him, but he's just so like.
He's 0 to 100. He's going to hit somebody.
Like, he's not a guy that's got it. Like, he's just not polished enough yet.
Yeah, he's a rocket without the guidance system.
Yes, that's exactly. It's like the system came off and he's like flying all over the place.
I'll say this, man, and you brought up a really good point because I listened to the postgame, the players as well, and almost to a man, they rave about Fickell. They rave about the leadership. Even the guys that were here pre-Fickell, right? The Paul Christ era guys, the Wisconsin traditional guys, they really rave about him. And I will also say this: this is not everything, and it doesn't necessarily sway, but I really liked what I heard from Fickell post-game too. I really liked the accountability. They asked him what went wrong. He said, "Put it on me. If you stay, you're going to be champ. These players are going to be champions." That we went and talked to him. Call me a fool. I don't know. I really like what I heard from him post-game, and I really like, to your point, what I heard from players post-game. So now, it's got to get a lot better on the field, but I did take that out of it.
My pushback on that is we're getting rapidly past the point of words. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. You have to find something to hang your hat on. And I think that's one of the aspects that we struggle with right now is you look at this program and there's really nothing you can look at that looks like it's headed in the right direction. And you and I were on the phone and talked about it. And I said, there's no growth. Like, there's nothing I look at. And like, we were talking just on individual player level. Like, I think Dupree got a little bit better as the season went on. I think Allegro, I think he just got more playing time. Like, I don't know how much better he got, but he's just like, he's getting by on physical tools for the better or worse.
I mean, Vinny Anthony's taken off.
He's
right?
the one.
Like he gets no credit for the development of Vinny Anthony.
And that's wrong because he is absolutely a better player than he was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that, and you're right, Justin. Like, it's nobody wants to hear us talk at this point, but I just look at it as it's still super early. It is
important that he acknowledges that it's on him and that he's not like that was the thing from the Tressel one interview last week when he's like, well, so much of it is you need to be locked in, and if you're just not quite right on, and I'm like, listen, this isn't all just on players not playing hard or being locked in. There are some issues here that you're failing to adjust to. Like, you have a very limited player group. You need to maximize what you can effectively do well on the field. Like, if you can't be disruptive, then you at least need to be able to say, hey, we can hold the point and stop teams from running it down our throat. And I don't care if you're going to give something up in the passing game to an extent. I would rather risk that than have teams run it down our throat all game long and give up the field that way. Because let's be honest, as college quarterbacks, there's still a solid chance that they just miss on throws. But running backs probably aren't going to miss if you give them a gap to run through for 8 yards.
That's true.
I'll say this one quick thing. I thought the Ricardo Hallman thing was real interesting today about, taking his name off the senior part. I think he is an NFL caliber guy. But that started to make me think, okay, are we kind of getting our NIL stuff together, right? He's a great example of a type of player you try to keep, right? Pay him a little bit more than, what a 5th, 6th round kind of guy would be. And then if we can start keeping some of that talent with some of that younger talent coming up, I think we'll be right back in it. But I'll say this, Justin, I know you guys talk a lot about scheme. I think there's no way you hang around a team like Oregon, who's very well coached, if you don't have guys who really know what they're doing and putting guys in a spot to be successful. I think they've bottomed out against Nebraska and Iowa because that's what college football is. I promise you, if they would have beat Penn State or Oregon, they'd have lost that next game.
I won't disagree on that.
We just got to get on to the next one. Sorry. Because we got Brian, Dom, Jake, Evan, Tyler, Henry, and ZB. I see all you guys. Some of you guys I know I've met in person, which I love. So I do got to let you go, brother. But as always, dude, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get Brian on. Brett S., I see you in the queue, but your camera's not on. Oh, yep, not on. So let's get Brian in. Justin, I'll let you respond to that comment, though.
Yeah, so what I'll say is, from a scheme standpoint, I do think there actually is some problems with it. Like, I've said all along, and I don't know how many people have actually listened to me on this. I think the defense, from a understanding of the principles of it, of what the basics are, is run fairly well, which is you have guys who are limiting a lot of the major issues. They're not giving up big plays. They're not necessarily getting totally out of position and getting gashed. What I will say is, and what I've said all along, this is supposed to be a scheme that's predicated somewhat on disruption. And from that standpoint, there's nothing there. And what that does to a team is, if you play perfectly, you can be okay. But the reality is, with this scheme, is if you play perfectly and you're never getting negative plays, teams are still going to be in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, and have an opportunity to convert on that. What the disruption adds is you have the ability to get a team in a 3rd and 12. You have the ability to force a turnover that you normally aren't doing. So what's happening is you get these games where we have everything go perfect and we end up staying close. And then you have games where it doesn't go quite as to plan and you end up getting gashed, or you end up getting beat up because you don't have the ability to force negative plays and put teams into a bind where they're one-dimensional. And that's kind of where this team has struggled all season long. They're not really capable of dictating at all on defense. And because of that, they get themselves into situations where they have to be perfect on a 3rd and 6, or they end up giving up a first down every time. And teams march down the field, or they grind it down the field on us because we're not talented enough to stop them.
Brian, what is up, man? How are you doing today?
What's going on, guys? So, rough season.
Yeah.
At a few different points as this game was going on, I'm like, I just want this year done. It feels as though these guys, there's a lot of merchants, glory chasers on this team. I think a lot of the players that were interviewed at the conclusion kind of alluded to that too, that we're going to get up for the Oregons and the Penn State, but then our rivalry games, which is the ones that should matter, the ones that should get you juiced up, nothing. Yeah. There's maybe 2 or 3 players that actually get juiced, and you can't win games that way.
How much do you think, both of you guys, I'm curious, in the chat too, you look at the rivalry games, because it's a good point. Justin, our best games this year from an effort standpoint were probably Penn State and Oregon.
Yeah.
Right. So look at
early in the Alabama game before we got to have halftime.
Like, you look at the transfers who are in the 2 deep, it's the Thomases, it's the linebackers, it's an offensive lineman, a receiver, corners, quarterback, running back. Those dudes don't care about an Iowa rivalry. They don't give a crap. I'm speaking, I know, I'm not saying they don't want to win against Minnesota, but it doesn't mean as much to them as it did a Ryan Connolly. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. I think it's a valid point.
I agree with that completely. I think that's part of what I sense and why this team seems to get down. Like the guys who are ultra competitive, like almost to a fault, we don't have a ton of those guys. And those are the guys that kind of manufacture the intensity. That's like you had a Leo Chanel back in the day. That was a dude that wanted to absolutely crush everybody at every given moment and is now doing it in the NFL. You had a bunch of those guys. Keanu Benton was another one of those guys that was ultra competitive. And, those are guys that go out there and make plays, even in games where they don't care, just because they want to prove that they're the dominant guy on the field. Like they wanted to show up the offensive lineman and prove that they're the most talented guy. And there's not a lot of that. Like, I mean, you had a little bit with maybe Elijah Hills. Allegro seems to have a little bit of that, I hate the term, but alpha male kind of attitude to him where he's just out there and wants to just prove that he's the most physical and aggressive guy out there. And you need to find more of that attitude because the more of it is, guys feed off each other with that.
Brian, what is your I kind of want to get through some of these a little quicker, and I super apologize for everybody in the chat. I just don't want to keep people sticking around forever. But what is your confidence level on Fickell going forward? We're going to end, I think, all of our call-ins with that. Where are you at on this regime going forward?
He needs to turn it around quick. The MVP of this year is your punter. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, it is. Brian, man, I really appreciate you, brother. How was your Thanksgiving?
I wish I was still on it.
Good man. Thank you, sir, for the call-in.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Brett, let's get you in here, man. You were in the queue for a while.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the
I'm just watching Georgia Tech here, pour their guts out and kicking the crap out of Georgia, so I'm enjoying that. I think, as far as Fickell goes, I'm confident in him. I think that you mentioned that press conference. I think he's finally starting to get that this is not where he's coming, like where he was. Like it's going to be a lot harder. And I think he gave too much rope to Longo and to Tress, and he was just going to be the CEO, right? Like he was just going to be that guy that kind of, I'm going to be the recruiter, I'm going to be the closer guy. And now he's realizing like, crap, it doesn't work like that. Like I'm going to have to be involved. Like your team's going to take on the identity, and the defense is taking on the identity of Tressel, and they're taking on the identity of Longo. He's the head guy they need to take on because he's a tough dude. Like that's what he wants to be, right? Like he wants to be a tough guy, and it's just not getting down. And I love that they love him, but it's just not, the results aren't showing up on the field. Justin, I think you and I have kind of agreed with each other on Tress's, like it's not, for me, it's not the scheme, it's his philosophy on the scheme. Because you can be aggressive in this defense. He's just not it. He's Joe Barry. Like Packer fans, like he's Joe Barry incarnate. Like, and it's so frustrating because he's not willing to dictate to the offense. He's going to sit back. I'm not going to get beat over the top, and they're just going to take 3 and 5 yards. You should be able to trip into a TFL every once in a while. Like, come on. Like, we had two today, and all of us were like, wow, when's the last time that happened? And it was because guys were flying around at times.
It's not even just that. Like, how often do we look at it and we see it's like 1 yard every single time? Like, it's never like a 3 or 4 yard tackle for loss. Like, it always seems like guys have somebody squared up 4 yards deep, and then they just sit and wait for him until they're like at the line of scrimmage.
It feels like a minor miracle, right? When you get a tackle for loss with this defense, get him 2nd and 11 feels like the greatest play of the year. It's just ridiculous. Let me ask you guys this, because I had this theory before. I don't think I said this on the show, but I think I said in the Discord. I think pressure could be a hell of a thing. And Brett, you're bringing up a really good point. It feels like Luke. I think Fickell obviously is going to feel it this offseason.
I think he's felt it all year. Like you could see it. He's a guy that looks like he's worn down. Like he absolutely looks like he's feeling
frustrated. Like he looks frustrated. He's to the point. I think he's been getting to this point, and now he's finally like, F it. Like things need to change, or I'm going to be out of a job. And so I don't know, these next 2 hires are going to be just so important. I'm known in the chat as the Marion guy. We're seeing what a triple offense can do to a team. So that's my.
I love it. I would absolutely love to see that offense. And people get freaked out going, "Well, this is the go-go." I'm like, it's the Kansas offense. It's the same thing Penn State's running. Like, there's some variation off of it, but the run scheme is basically the same thing. It's like somebody said, well, it's a multiple spread. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. I'm like,
that's what I said. I was like, well, if I change the go-go offense to a multiple spread, would it make you feel better? And like 3 people were like, yeah, it would make me feel much better.
Brett, man, I'm gonna let you get going, but how was your Thanksgiving, sir?
I was well. Kept it to just the immediate family, and we made pizza. We didn't do a traditional.
Oh, nice.
Traditional dinner.
Always nice to change it up here and there.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, brother, for dialing. Thank you so much for dialing in, man. And I apologize for some of the abbreviated conversations. I just want to make sure I get to everybody on today's show. I do want to throw this comment up here. Robert said last offseason, I said I was at 7 wins. Ryan asked me why I was so down on this team. I tried to be more positive from there. Ryan, you got my hopes up to crush me. I am sorry, Robert. I also realized I'm stop asking everyone how their Thanksgiving is, because I'm going to eventually get to some person who's like, it's fine. My family's in jail. I drank a lot. I just don't want to put somebody on the spot. So I'm going to stop asking that. Now I realize I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Brian Axis, Brian, you're next up in here. Although I don't see you coming up on the camera.
You have brought up right now, I think.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Sorry.
And Brian is someone we've met in person. So Brian, man, where are you at on this game, program, franchise?
I was at the game today. I was at Camp Randall today. And you could just, when we missed the field goal, the place just started emptying out. And the reason I bring it up is because it wasn't like people were angry or ticked off like past years when we've had bad games. It was, you could just sense it was the apathy.
Yeah.
And
I got better things to do with my afternoon.
Yeah. And the part that worries me about that is I think kind of parallels with what happened with the hockey program. You know, when I first 10 years ago, they were still selling out the Kohl Center. Then in 2 years later, it's like they don't even open up the third level. You know, nobody cares hardly. It can happen quick. Mm-hmm. And if you lose the fan base like that, that has a lot of repercussions on a lot of, you can generate email. Yeah. The atmosphere, the recruiting that brings to you. So, which just kind of leads me into where you're asking where we're at Fickell. I don't have a ton of confidence, but I pretty much agree with you, Ryan, that if you start trying to cycle through coaches, that's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think you're in on them at least for 2 more, unless next year goes completely south. I think you got to be in on Luke Fickell for at least 2 more years, and just see, the recruiting classes do look better if you can bring him in. I guess that's kind of what you got to hang your hat on at this point, and just hope that he figures it out. As far as the coordinators, being able to actually use that talent.
Do you think he will? Because that's a whole nother question. Do you guys think he will figure it out? Because I agree with you. You don't move on after this year. But do you will figure it out?
I personally think that Fickell's a smart guy. I think what he has to do is he has to be extremely shrewd in the next 2 hires, and he needs a couple of very intelligent, very self-aware coaches that come in and understand that they don't know everything, but they're going to come up with the correct answers on it. Because that's kind of where I'm struggling with both of the 2 guys that are in there now, in Tressel and Longo, is that neither one of them seemed to think that there was they almost felt like thought they were infallible to a point. Like, I got this. It's like you have to have confidence, but you also need to be self-aware enough and be able to self-evaluate and look like, listen, this ain't working. I need to adjust and go in another direction, because if this is what we are, we're not going to be good. And that's kind of where I look at Tressel, and I'm like, it's going to take, if we were required to have NFL players all over the defense here, we're just not going to have that. That's not going to be the baseline of Wisconsin. We're not Alabama. You have got to find a way to be productive with 3 or 4 NFL guys sprinkled in. And maybe you have a defensive line that's just some really solid college players.
But then they need 3 or 4 NFL guys sprinkled in, which we don't have.
That's the thing. We don't have it at all now. But
NFL guys.
But that's what he needs to find, a scheme that you don't have to have an all-star team to be good. And it feels like that's what this defense is.
Yeah, here's my problem, though. Now, I was talking to, and I don't know if I've ever articulated it this way. You shouldn't have to scheme up a game-breaking scheme every single play to win one-on-ones against Minnesota.
Oh, I agree with that.
It feels like eventually you should just have someone be able to beat a tackle off Minnesota or a guard, and we can't even do that on one-on-ones, which just kills me.
Our outside linebackers are really bad.
Yeah, Brian, man, any final thoughts before we move forward kind of from here? I appreciate you calling in, man.
Not really. Just at this point, looking forward to the basketball season. They've got me. I'm trying to keep my expectations a little low because, last year we all got hyped at the peak of that season, and we saw how that went south. And I thought, I didn't want to put too much stock in it, just like we said with football this year. But so I'm excited, but I'm trying to not get too worked up just in case they for when they hit a rough patch.
We can always transition to women's hockey if we have to.
We'll figure out something. I almost did a Locked On Black Friday sales today because I didn't want to do that reaction show. All right, Brian, it's good to see you again, my friend. Let's bring Dom in. Dom's been waiting for a while. And after this, we got Jake, Kevin, Tyler. We still got Zach. We got JB's in the queue. Yes.
Oh, no.
We have an all-star lineup, but we got to start with Dom. What is up, my friend?
Hey, what's going on? Sorry, I was driving when you started the stream, so I pulled over real quick. I got to say, I went at you, Ryan, at the beginning of the year, and I told you this 2-4-5 was not going to work. And it is not going to work.
Yeah. You also take shots against my Niners, which also turned out to be true.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I know my stuff here, okay?
Well, Dom, the only thing I'll push back on that is
everything. That's for
Jimmy ran a lot of 2-4-5, but it is a different 2-4-5.
Okay. Well, what happened against Penn State and Oregon when they played 4 defensive linemen and switched to a 4-3? We did pretty dang good against them. Okay. What happened last year in the bowl game proved how this offense could be successful. Okay. We had the quarterback we wanted. We had a running back we wanted. It proved we could be successful. Okay. This year, what happens? Boom. Alabama, he's out. So now we got Locke coming in again, and that's not going to do any good. And so, again, 2 quarterbacks, 2 injuries, and Locke freaking plays. What the hell can you do?
I won't disagree with that. What I will say is, with regards to the offense, I think that LSU is kind of a little fool's gold just based off of what they were defensively, because they were a bad defensive team. I won't say that you don't take anything away from how we looked in that game. I will say that it's a lot harder to be that level of consistent. And let's be honest, Mordecai is probably the best quarterback we've had in the last 2 years.
I'll agree with that. But I'm sorry, TBD didn't do too bad. He wasn't throwing interceptions every game in the beginning of the year. He gets hurt on a fluke play against Alabama and breaks his leg. What can you do? On the sidelines. And so what can you do? I mean, he hasn't had his starting quarterback for a full year.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There's no doubt about that. There's extenuating circumstances to a lot of this.
That's a fair point.
I agree. And people who are calling for him to get fired this year, do you know how much money they would owe him if they fired him this year? It's not going to happen.
It's like $40 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Till at least the end of 2026. Yeah. So you people need to get over it and realize
he's not getting fired this year. I know that.
4 years.
It's just
4 years. And another thing I got to say, what the hell is going on with our in-state recruiting? Because it's shite. And we're not keeping the best players in state. They're going to Penn State, Notre Dame. Well, tell me those players can't come over and play here. What is going on that they are not getting these kids? Okay.
Well, I think with that, part of it is you have now the staff, and I think Luke Fickell, if he could go back, would keep somebody with more of a program tie on staff. Like his first staff had nobody with Wisconsin program ties. I think that was something he would change.
The first one I will say is Flanagan was a legacy to Notre Dame. I mean, his dad played there. So that one was likely going to happen. There have been misses, absolutely. But we're also coming to a point where programs are attacking Wisconsin differently than they were. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan are all coming after it early rather than kind of coming after these kids a little bit after. And when Wisconsin sinks their claws into a guy, they normally get him. But when they have to fight somebody right from the get-go, and right now, the reality is we're not the Wisconsin we were in 2017. Like, we don't get to sell that we're 10, 11-win team. We're selling that we're a 5-7 team, and they have an opportunity to go to somebody who's playing for the playoff. And that's a hard sell to a kid.
I think it's fair to point out, too, at the end of the Paul Chryst era, the in-state recruiting was starting to fall. Like, Paul Chryst is starting to lose those guys because
he missed on Carson.
There's a couple. There's
Carson
a couple offensive
and
the other one that went to Notre Dame.
Where was Lucas today? Where was Xavier today?
I don't know. I didn't see the snap counts for today, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of.
I didn't see him on the field, and usually he makes at least one big play a game that he plays. Okay, so, and what happened to developing our walk-ons to where, Coach, I can catch a BB in the dark? Might be a little too young for that one, Ryan.
I don't know. We know who that is. Nick Davis.
And what happened to that?
But
we're not developing
do we have a Nick Davis?
Not playing them. It's ridiculous.
Give me your confidence level on Fickell going forward. I know we're keeping him, and I agree. You're not going to fire him, but where are you at, confident-wise?
Where I'm at, he needs to hire a better defensive coordinator because everything starts with defense. Defense wins you championships. And if he keeps Stressel, he's got to go to a 3-4 or a 4-3, plain and simple. I'm sorry, this variation of the 2-4-5 is not working. It worked when you played 4 defensive linemen against your big schools. So you were getting pressure, you were getting tackles for loss. I mean, what happened to that? And so that's my opinion, but I'll let you guys go. Have a great show.
I do think that part of the
opinion is always.
What I will say with the 2-4-5, I do think part of it is being driven by the lack of line depth and them saying we feel more confident in trying to play our outside backers as effectively stand-up 4-3 defensive ends than being able to play multiple defensive linemen because we just don't have the bodies if these guys get tired, and we're just going to get gashed by second half if we don't have enough bodies to be able to put out there against an offensive line. I'm not saying that that's okay.
No, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. So, all right, guys, later.
I gotta let you go, but appreciate you, brother. Let's get the great Jake Myron. It's been a while.
Jake's like, Justin, you are full of it.
Look.
Before you even get started, Jake, where can people find your tremendous work, especially on recruiting, football side, all that good stuff that you do?
Yeah, so doing some work for Athlon Sports and also BadgerNotes.com. We're switching over to Substack, so if you want to subscribe, it is free. We do have a free option, so you can get it directly to your inbox with Substack. So check out either one of those.
Nice. Where are you at on this game program, Fickell? Anywhere you want to go, man?
Yeah. So it was a roller coaster today because I was at the game. And so then being up in the box and we were watching it, taking in, Kedrick was also with me, and we were just watching it, and it was very apathetic to begin. I kind of felt that way going in. I did predict them to win, but you just can't pay me to pick Minnesota to beat Wisconsin. Yeah. So I was apathetic going into the game, and the entire game, I just had that feel. I was kind of like laughing almost at like, okay, this offense had 36 rushing yards in the first half, 36 rushing yards in total, 43 yards of offense in the first half. That's hilarious. This team is faltering. And then after I was removed from the game for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, I just started to get bummed. And I think the reason for that is I'm only 24 years old. So the last time that the Badgers were not in a bowl game, I was 1 year old. The last time that they did not win at least one trophy game, I was 3 years old. I have never seen a Badger team this bad in my life. Objectively, I have not. So this is unfamiliar territory for me. Even if I did see it coming a little bit, this is unfamiliar territory for me. So it's kind of been a little bit of the waves of emotions throughout this entire day, really.
I'll say really quick, the good thing is you couldn't drink when you were 1, but you can drink now. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Bottoms up.
I want to ask you guys, because I'm very curious. Do you feel like the culture in college football has changed since we introduced money?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the attitude of players has significantly changed. Like, we used to hang our hat on how hard kids played. And does it seem like across the board, I'm not even just saying Wisconsin, like it feels like kids are playing like mercenaries now. Like they're making business decisions over being guys who are like, I'm at a school. And part of it's also the transfer portal. It's not just financials, but the second we gave kids the opportunity to jump ship that anytime they wanted without the year to sit out, they just seem less engaged. Like they're just like, all right, I'm just going to leave anyway. So I'm out already. Like they know they're out the second that they plan on leaving. And when kids actually had to put thought into it and realize that if they're making an honest to God decision to go somewhere that they're going to have to sit for a year, then it felt like they were a little bit more, there's more depth to their decision than what's happening now.
And I mean, I would say that going back, I think Brian said it earlier that, there are just, it seems like there's only a couple of players that really buy into these rivalry games. And that is a symptom of money being into college football.
Absolutely.
You like, for example, this is another thing I wanted to bring up. I feel awful for Hunter Wooler, and this is how he's going out. He has legitimately become one of my favorite Badgers of all time. And he didn't show a lot of emotion post game, but you could just kind of like feel it like in the air. Like this is just not the way that he wanted to, or frankly should be going out, honestly.
Two things I would say to that quick. I think Justin, to some degree, you're right, but I also don't want to equate lack of talent with lack of effort. I think there's just some spots on this team that aren't good enough.
There's no doubt about that.
And you look at it like if players were a little more talented, if they're just a little faster, stronger, you're like, oh, he's playing harder. Well, he's just bigger, faster, more talented. Like, so I think there's an element of that, right? The roster's just not good enough, and because that, some players, they're playing hard, they're just not fast enough. And as much as they want to be, they're not getting to the hole any quicker. And then the other part of it is this now, the onus is on coaches so much more in the portal and recruiting to really identify the right culture fits. Because Daltrey said it down here, and I agree with this. I think you can still get players to play for you with money as a minor factor, but now you got to work harder to find those players. Like you got to find the fits, and you have to work much harder to find those fits now than you used to. So I think you're right, but I would add those caveats onto it.
So I think to me it is what ended up happening is that you look at what players deem as important to them in coming into it, because there were only, let's be honest, money was always being exchanged. We all know that. It's just who it was being exchanged to has gotten much wider now. So it's something that a lot of players didn't have as like a factor for them for the most part, that now do have that being thrown onto their lap, which I feel like is what changes it a little bit. Especially you now have people buzzing in your ear no matter what. And I think that when the transfer portal thing happened, that's the driver for this. Now everyone can go wherever they want, and people are actively recruiting all season long. And the second you don't get the amount of snaps that you want in one game, now your attitude's being soured by an outside source that's, does not necessarily have your best interests at heart.
Right.
Jake, I want you to give us kind of a really quick kind of thought is how much upheaval are we going to see this offseason? Like if you had to ballpark a number of transfers, for example, and then I might, if you're cool with that, I'm going to keep you on and go to a fourth string just because you have a unique insight with all the work you do and get Kevin on as well. But I want you to kind of hit that question. How much upheaval do you think we see this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most interesting thing to watch is going to be the fallout of the quarterback room with Longo being gone. What does that do for Braden Locke? What does that do for his younger brother? What does it do for Mabry, who was fully recruited by Longo? Obviously, we have Carter Smith in the mix now. So, I mean, you don't exactly feel confident about where this quarterback room is going to be at, like fully. I'd say ballpark, I don't know, 12, 15. Is that shooting?
That's actually
low,
not. That's roughly what I was expecting too, because I think somebody asked me if I thought 25 was the number, and I'm like, that's a big number. I'm like, that's normally like a coaching change kind of number.
And I will say, especially because I think that by and large, there are a lot of players in that locker room who really are bought into what Fickell is going to do here, there is just going to be that factor of they're going to get better opportunities somewhere else. So it's just a factor of life. That's just what college football is.
I think it's going to be a floor of around 15. I think you could see 14, 15, 16. I think it's going to be in that mid 10 to 20 range, to be honest.
Some are going to sting. I'll say that right now. There's going to be a couple people that hit that people are going to be like, oh, he's leaving?
Yeah.
All right, let's bring Kevin in quick. And Justin, you can continue on the point you're making, though.
Yeah, I think with regards to the off season here, there's going to be a lot of work done by this staff trying to hold this together. Now it could be, I don't want to say it's a good thing not going to a bowl. What it does give them the opportunity is to actually focus on their roster and say, hey, we need you here. We're headed in the right direction. Your opportunity's coming. Stay with us here. We're going to do this together. Whereas if you're focused on game planning for a D-level bowl game, you're probably not as focused on that as you could be.
Kevin, I think it's a real good point, though. Kevin, let's get to you, man. How are you feeling after this game?
Well, like you guys are feeling, except worse. You know, your comment there, we can't curse on the show. Well, you couldn't hear me after the game. But
that's what the Discord is for.
Yeah. How do you convince the talent they brought in that they are headed in the right direction? If they're not starting to see results and you got these other programs, you know, you get the Chucky thing. They're going to come into our playmakers and offer them a lot of money. That's what worries me.
Well, the answer is you're not going to be able to convince all of them. I mean, the true answer is you're going to lose some because you can't convince them all.
It's really going to come down to how loyal they are.
Right.
And that's why you're looking at somebody like Vinny, where it's like, you came into your own this year, you know, believe in us. We'll give you an opportunity to show out and get an NFL shot after this. But we've got to come through for him too and show him that we're going to put the ecosystem in there for him to be able to do it.
And then the next question is, how convinced are we that Fickell's going to be able to make the right coaching hires? What has he showed us other than the recruiting?
Justin, you and I have talked about this one. I'm curious on Jake's take on this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, with his track record so far, I mean, we can say as of this specific moment, the AJ Blazek hire was a home run. Whether it be on the recruiting trail or look, the offensive line, maybe it's not up to snuff for Badger teams in the past. I mean, that's just the truth. But I mean, it's not the worst group on this team. Like AJ Blazek is still doing a good job with developing these guys, and I think that is the one that you could really point to. I do think that you have a good point in that the offensive coordinator was the big one. It didn't pan out. Fickell's not going to get a third offensive coordinator hire. So we really need to nail this one. I do understand the maybe a little bit of hesitancy on it, though, and we don't know for sure what it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. You know, I'm sort of out at Fickell at this particular point. Not that he should be fired. I'm out, and he might get his job saved by the 2026 schedule because it's an Indiana schedule.
Yeah. So one thing I will say that the offensive coordinators that we've kind of been linked to, I actually like what the two guys that are kind of being most spoken about in Marion and Craddock are the two names that have kind of come out a little bit. Both of those guys are sharp minds. Both schemes are more run heavy than what we had under Longo. To me, it seemed Longo's scheme seemed like he was a guy who liked to run the ball, but there was kind of lip service to it. When you have a coach who's truly bought in on running the football, they kind of relish in like finding ways to do it. Paul Chryst was that way with his offenses and like, how can we find a way to gash them in the run game? We had some of that even back to the guys that Bielema hired after him and even Ludwig, because they were pro style guys. They really liked working their way through that. Longo's scheme never felt that way. Like you'd look at it, and Ryan, we talked about it. He ran a ton of inside zone. Like there just wasn't a lot of versatility to his scheme. And when you have a team like Iowa that's set up to stop the run, like they're feasting on that. There's no deception in it. They know exactly what they're playing against, and they're going to crush it. You have to find ways, and that's why I like Marion's. You throw a triple option scheme out there, that's putting a ton of pressure on guys to make the right call and really read their keys. on a run scheme that's built to cause deception and get guys' eyes flowing in the wrong direction. And especially if you have two good backs that are capable of one going in one direction, one going the other, if they really sell it, like you're going to consistently get 3-4 yards simply because it's going to take you a beat to make sure that other guy doesn't have the ball.
Well, a lot of teams run inside zone, but a lot of teams have more fluctuation with their running.
Eye candy.
It just doesn't feel like. I'll give you a great example of it. 2 days ago, we ran, or 2 games ago, we ran a really nice jet sweep with Tratch, right? We got like 15 yards. You haven't seen that since. Like, you could
not
move
even
the
a fake,
ball.
like you brought up. There's not even a fake to get the deception out of it.
Let me tell you, I play video games. If a play works for me, I do that until somebody stops me. There is an element of, if it worked, try it again. And if you don't, at least fake the action, because now it's on film.
With our offense, the way it's been this season, that's exactly how we should be running offense. If it works, keep doing it.
Kevin, I'm going to let you go, my friend. Thank you so much for dialing in. Any last thoughts before I do?
Not really. Thank God it's basketball season. Sorry, Justin.
That's right.
I'll survive. If they're playing well, I just want my team to win. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you, man. Jake, feel free whenever you want to drop off. I'll keep you on until you do. We got Tyler, our good friend Tyler, coming on the show. And Tyler, I actually have good news for you. I talked to your boy, John Garcia Jr.
Did you?
He's going to come on, and he's going to do some recruiting stuff when signing day hits.
Oh, I love that. Hell yeah, man. That's great.
So how are you doing post Minnesota game?
I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to be optimistic, really. I know this is the football kind of reaction show, but Greg Gard not too long ago lost our big March Madness streak, and he's rebounded nicely, especially this year. I'll be honest. I think John Tonje single-handedly has saved his job. I was on the fire guard train last year as well, but he's shown an ability to adapt, and I think we live in a world where we want instant gratification all the time, 24/7, and these things take time. And it's really become apparent to me how much Fickell inherited from Paul. I think it's been a mess for a long time, and it's taking longer than people thought to turn it around. And when you lose streaks like this, it's a sobering experience to really accept how far we've dropped before you can really make the changes necessary to go ahead and start moving on up. And progress isn't always linear either. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward, 1 step goes back. So I think we're seeing the progress in the recruiting with the 24 and 25 class. It's going to take some time before those guys hit the field and can make an impact, but do what you can. The transfer portal, my opinion on the portal is that it's kind of the bet and dent store. There's a reason why guys are in the portal. And, I think you're going to miss more often than you hit. And I think that's evident with the football program so far under Fickell and company. But, I still am excited for what he can do. I think he's the right guy. I think, like you guys have talked about, he needs to make changes at the coordinator positions, but I'm still trying to stay optimistic.
Yeah, I think what you said there about progress being linear, like that, or how it's not linear, like that is something that Badger fans are just really going to need to keep in mind when we get to 2025, because I think a lot of people are viewing 2025 as a make or break year for Fickell. But when you look at that schedule, can you pick out 6 wins there? I don't know if I can. I think 2026 is where we're really going to see it, because that's when we're going to get all of these Fickell guys are really going to be seeing their chances on the field. Like you said, progress is not linear. Just, we all need to keep that in mind next season specifically.
So one of the things that I was curious what your guys' thoughts are, because do you think we saw enough of the young guys rolled in this year? Like, there's going to be guys that we know next year are probably going to be pushing, like guys like Mendel, Coverly, who are already kind of hitting the 2 deep. Like, these are guys that it probably helps you if you get them at least a drive or whatever, so you can get film, things to work on, just to keep them engaged through the course of the season. And we didn't really do a lot of that. And there's other guys like, Ryan, we've talked about it, Nello, Heiberger. Those 2 guys, we had nothing that we were getting from the outside linebacker room at all. Like, there's just no pass rush there. Those 2 guys are 2 young bodies with speed. Like, there's a lot of situations where if you're getting nothing, like, what's the worst that could happen? I suppose, they get beat on something where there's some deception and a guy gets outside of them and runs. But it's not like the defense was perfect this season. Like there was room to be had where like I'd rather have that guy out there running 100 miles an hour, making mistakes and being engaged.
Yeah, and getting somebody to develop. I'm curious. I mean, I've kind of said my piece on that. I think on the defensive side, more of those young players should have played. It is what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think offensive line too, because there's going to be guys that are going to be redshirt freshmen that are going to play, and they should. Like, we know Haywood's going to play. I absolutely. I think Mandel's going to be a guy that's going to punt or push because he's probably our most athletic offensive lineman, not named Haywood. So you have a couple of guys that are probably going to be almost borderline locks to start, even if they're going to have some growing pains next year. But they probably could have maybe sped that up a little bit had they given them a little more time this year to get their legs under them.
Do you guys think that's a weight room? I mean, I know we all love Brady Collins, and trust me, I love when he's on the show, and he just makes you want to run through a wall. But I mean, something that is to be said for no matter how talented you are, these guys you're going against are in a Big Ten weight room for 3-4 years at this point. You know, I mean, maybe you can play Xavier Lucas like we saw at the corners boundary when you're going up against guys, but in the trenches, sometimes I'm afraid those guys get eaten alive. And we saw a lot of Dylan Johnson this year, but isn't he like a 20-year-old freshman? So, I mean,
well, he's a monster.
That helps a little bit too.
He's got grown man strength.
Yeah, he does.
Absolutely.
For sure. But one thing I was thinking about, I like to throw this question at you guys. With the schedule being next year, what does progress look like? 7-5, and the 5 losses are more competitive than this year? I mean,
I think it looks like a coherent offense and a coherent defense.
Really quick, Tyler, what's your answer to that? Because then I'm going to let you go so I can get Zach on. I just need to keep rolling through people. But then we'll answer that. I think it's a great question. What's your answer to that?
Mine, I think, is you get back to a bowl game and you're at least 6-6, if not 7-5. And like Justin said, you know, you start to see some cohesiveness on offense, and you know, it looks like we're actually competent and can execute at least some plays and whatnot.
Not 34 yards of or passing in the first half or whatever it was.
Yeah, and a minimum of like 5 batted passes for the whole year would be nice too.
It would be great. Yeah. Tyler, man, you are awesome, and it's great to see you again.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your night.
I'm going to drop off also, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Jake, thank you, brother. Those are two incredible people right there. Tyler and Jake are both awesome. We get fortunate to have them both dial in. All right, let's get another just a champion of the show, champion person on the show. We got Zach Bartz, another great dude, knows ball. Zach, man, thank you for being patient. Where are you at right now?
I mean, watching that game, I'm kind of just apathetic and ready for the season to be done. I'm more looking forward to the offseason and see what we do. I'm kind of looking at the coordinators. I also really like the two that have been thrown around between Marion and Craddock. I think another one to watch is Wilson, the Tulsa coach that got fired. I think they has ties with Fickell when they were at Ohio State.
I've heard some smoke that he might be Oklahoma, like a guy Oklahoma's looking at, which
I
would rather
that's
have.
Fine. I would rather have Craddock and Marion too. But I just want someone who's a scheme fit and they can tailor to our personnel, because it seemed this year on both sides of the ball, we had to have our personnel tailored to the scheme. And I think a good coordinator is going to do it the other way around. You got to tailor to who you have there.
And both those guys, that's one they absolutely preach.
Yep.
And I don't love Wilson just because, like, he's a little older. He feels a bit like a little bit of a retread. And then, like, when you're an OC at State, you have so much talent at your disposal. Like, I'm not sure if it translates as well to Wisconsin.
He's
so
got
I'm with
some
you.
baggage too.
Yeah.
Like being let go at Indiana, there's some baggage there that.
Yeah. And I wasn't high on him either. I just know that was kind of a name that may have been tossed around a little bit.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have Craddock or Marion by a landslide of a margin. For me, it's the defensive coordinator, Tressel. I kind of have a weird feeling on this where I don't think they're going to fire him, like outright fire him. I think they demote him, if anything. And the reason I say that is because you already have so many buyouts already. You have Fickell at Cincinnati, and then you're paying him salary. You have Paul Christ, Phil Longo, and Jack Bicknell. You fire both your coordinators on top of having the buyout, you're going to have so much press, and it's the sky falling. Why'd you go through 2 coordinators in the same year? It's year 2. What's going on? I think they demote him, if anything. And I'm kind of curious to see who they would bring in. because if they go internal, there's only one other guy who has experience as a defensive coordinator on the staff, and that's Grinch. And if you promote him, that's a fireable offense. That is a fireable
the PR
offense.
associated with that would be an absolute nightmare, given where Fickell is right now. He would never make that move.
That is a fireable offense.
Yeah, for people who maybe don't follow it quite as closely, which is totally cool. Like, I don't expect everyone to know every assistant coach and where they're coming from. Like, there's a reason Alex Grinch is not a defensive coordinator anymore.
Yeah.
So that just add context to it. His last stint there was not successful at USC. In fact, it was horrendously unsuccessful. So I want to kind of kick this around to you guys too. And Zach, while you're on, I'm really curious to this because you watch a ton of ball. What are you most optimistic about with this team right now?
I think for me, it's going to be what we do in terms of the hires. Because if we knock both these hires out of the park, and let's say they put their money where their mouth is and they get a really good quarterback that fits the system, my optimism for this team is going to be much, much higher than if they kind of just back into a coordinator hire that they just didn't want and they kind of just backed in, or they kind of got their last resort hire. If they knock it out and get a Marion and get a really, really good quarterback out of the portal where we're not starting lock, my optimism for this team is going to be much, much better. And it also is going to depend on what they do with the defensive coordinator. I like Tressel. I think he's a good dude. He's not a good defensive coordinator for what we got right now. I get a lot of Joe Barry vibes where there is no stunts, there's no twists, there's no exotic blitzes, there's nothing that's really going to cause a havoc play. It's a lot of, I'm going to sit in nickel because I trust that that's a strength of this defense, and I'm going to let them kind of come to me. And the offense is going to start dictating the pace, the tempo, the intensity, and everything. And you get this bend, and then they eventually break. And there's nothing that's really putting the pressure on the offense. They're putting the pressure on us. And with a weak front seven, you got to find ways to get them home. You got to find ways to cause some havoc plays.
So I want to throw this at you because you brought up Marion a little bit already. What do you think about Mensa with Craddock? Have you watched him at all?
Yeah, I like Craddock's scheme. I think it would fit really well here. I like how he's a young up-and-comer guy. Mensa, I think he fits the system well. The thing I like is he's already got experience with that scheme, so you're getting that – you're kind of accelerating the learning curve. Yes, you're accelerating a learning curve. Only thing, if I had to give a knock on him, it's his arm strength. He's kind of got a Braden Locke arm, in my opinion.
He's a bigger guy, but I watched him that's a high-effort arm. He just looks like he's putting everything he's got into it. And
he's listed at 6'3" at least. Yeah. And for people to be watching, we saw Craddock.
He's pretty mobile, too. He's definitely more mobile.
He is, which is nice because you're adding another dimension in with a mobile quarterback.
We also got JB on the show down there, the bottom left corner looking. JB, what's up, my friend?
Feeling good, JB? Yeah.
Oh, JB, a legend of the Discord himself. I love the shirt though, man. I love the shirt he's got a Compton hat on with the neon green glasses. It's a fit that looks.
This shirt I had made in Israel in 2019. Nice. That's why it's Hebrew. Yeah, I had a whole bunch of stuff. Man. Right, first, I want to say I am in the finals of our fantasy football league.
We're getting.
I'm 600 points higher than everybody. Going into the playoffs, I had a great day today. What am I getting if I win?
What
Don't remind me. I went like 6-12.
JB, what do you want?
27-4 or something. Do I get the Melvin Gordon signed? Maybe like helmet or jersey or something. What am I getting?
You get Melvin Gordon signed. He's just going to stand in your hallway and
the flag. Do I get the flag in the back?
Which one do you want? You could have one.
All right.
So Mizzou guys, let me know, JB.
Can I tell you? I have negative JB and positive JB.
Which one are we getting tonight?
Both.
I'm nervous.
Negative. Oh. It's crazy because for the last 30 years, right, all I wanted was a passing game. All I wanted was a quarterback, spread the ball out. I think something like Chris used to it was like 5% of the time he ran out of the gun. Just run 30% of the time out of the gun, right? I mean, just spread it out and get us passing, and we could beat OSU. And so it's like I always viewed Wisconsin, and you have to understand I'm not in Wisconsin. I'm in St. Louis, so it's like I get more of a kind of a national or regional, and we were always tier 1 or tier 2, right? Say there's 4 tiers in the Big Ten. We were tier 1. Like the year we went 13 and whatever, that year we were tier 1. The other ones were, let's say, just tier 2, but that's it. That's Wisconsin. Tier 1, tier 2. was there an anomaly the year that Cephas got hurt or couldn't play that year or whatever, and we had 8 wins that year? Yeah. Okay, still tier 2 though to me, just because of what happened. And so all of a sudden it's like now all I want is to be. I mean, we're bottom tier.
Yeah, we're the bottom
We're not
tier.
even mid tier. We're bottom tier.
Yeah.
Well, Indiana's great now. We're like below Northwestern or what. I mean, I don't even know where you put us now. And all I want is that running team that could get 9-10 wins. And it's really. I mean, this is like.
Right, like that's what we talked about a lot on the show too. You want the high floor that Paul Christ and this team used to have, and this team doesn't even have that.
5-7 is a disaster. This is an absolute disaster. This is so bad. I lived through the Morton days. Okay, we're not quite there yet, but we're close. We're trending in the wrong direction. I mean, if we get down to a 3-win team, it's dude, you don't know what that's like. You have no idea going to games when you go at halftime just because you want to get there for the 5th quarter. That's why we used to go to games. Like, you don't even care about the games when you get to that level. So that's the negative, JB.
So my thoughts on this are that's why these coordinator hires are so important. You've got to have people that are very disciplined in what they actually want to do and know how to prepare what they have to make that effective. That's kind of where I feel like you had a staff that, like in Longo, I think Longo had previously had at the multiple stops that he had, for the most part, had people that fit what he wanted to do. And so he was just diving effectively right into it. He kind of fell into some guys at North Carolina. Now looking back at it the way we want, Drake May was a legacy and Howell was there when he got there. So you had 2 NFL guys that kind of fell in your lap.
And he also, to the point that's been made several times, he also had 2 quarterbacks get hurt in his time at Wisconsin. I'm not saying that, but it doesn't.
I'm not putting that. Yeah, that's saying that's not a fact.
I think it's deeper than that, though, Justin. I think it's that player evaluation. I think that this staff, and whether it's the assistant coaches, if it's the coordinators, whoever it is, have done an absolutely horrible job at evaluating talent. I mean, where are these 25 linebackers we got? We didn't get 1 or 2. We didn't get one dog out of that group. I mean, I'm talking about a guy who's going to get you 8 sacks, a guy who's going to get a couple pickoffs, a guy who's just going to scare the other team. We didn't get one.
I'm not going to argue with you on that, but what I will say is from the portal, because the portal moves so fast, you don't normally get a lot of time to really vet.
But other teams are killing it in the portal. It's not every team
unless they're pulling people.
Yes, I wouldn't start naming them. I mean, I could name them, but there's teams that are hitting on 80% of the guys. They're bringing 9 guys in, and they hit on 80% of them. We're bringing 15 guys in, and we hit on 2 or 1. Maybe.
We're arguing that. We have not hit well on our portal guys. Elijah Hills was effectively the only guy that we hit on this cycle.
That's awful.
Is that true?
And those guys are paid.
Tywee was okay.
I think, Tywee's fine.
Is there anybody that you look like we got a difference maker out of the portal? Hills is the only guy. I would call him a difference maker.
Wait, do you think if instead of saying Tywee, we played if instead of Tywee, we played Yak and Dylan Jones and
I don't think it changes our production at all.
It changes nothing, so we didn't hit on him.
Well, no, you still hit on him. He's a quality player.
No, he was still productive. What you would say there is that he doesn't lift that room at all. He just wasn't.
If he doesn't lift it, it means nothing. If you get the same production without him, why spend the money for him?
Sure. Well, really quick perspective there is they had nobody with experience.
Zach
actually had experience.
We had Chaz.
Going off of this real quick, I think the portal and recruiting, this is where the coordinator hires matter most, because I think improvement for this team is not seeing this roster bottom out, and you can start to see an identity and a vision actually going forward. Right now, all I see is apathy.
Classes play.
Right now, I just see apathy.
Guys in the 2 deep next year, along with some of them being starters.
Yep. Because my question is for this is how far did the coordinators that we actually had between Longo and Tressel, how far did us hiring them, how far did that set our rebuild back? Because my question for that, or my point for that is saying, I don't think we needed to overhaul the system that was already here. I don't think we had a bad scheme on what was going on here, but it needed to be modernized. And when we brought in Longo and Tressel, essentially, especially on the offensive side, we started to completely overhaul and try to turn into like some weird version of Ohio State. And you don't need to be that. That's not going to work for us. It's not who we've been. That's never who we've been. You need to almost be more of like a Michigan running a power spread and just knocking people's teeth in.
Do you think that there was some ego associated with the transition on defense? Like Jimmy's defense, like Jimmy's scheme had been so good that Tressel was like, I can do better than that.
Well, I think there's always ego with these coaches.
Yeah,
it may not be. It may not
you don't
be,
want to get.
Or do you think
you don't want
it's
to get
just-
shown up?
You
It
think
may not
that
be
it's
that, though,
knows
Justin.
better and he didn't want to stray from his principles.
It could be.
You don't want to get
that.
shown up. You don't want to get shown up, but you also have you have big shoes to fill. Our defense has been our calling card for years, and I mean even before Jimmy, Aranda, Wilcox. You know, even you had Dave Doran for a little bit, who's now the coach at NC State, who had a pretty solid defense and then led him up. You know, we have had a good defense for years. I can understand maybe seeing like I need to follow what they've been doing. There's been some success here, and you have big shoes to follow. I think if anything, maybe it's more of I need to live up to the hype, and if I don't, I'm going to get ran out of town.
I think that he plays what he knows.
I
This
agree.
is the defense that he knows.
I think
He's
there's. I
worked
think
in
that this is
Cincinnati.
where he's comfortable and he
It
doesn't
can work
want to stray from his
in Wisconsin. The problem is Wisconsin's playing against a much tougher schedule, against much better teams that have much better talent at them, and we don't have the same guys that Cincinnati had. So you can't do that. You have to come in and say what's going to work here. I mean, this is like any business. This isn't just like you can't just go into a business and say, "Oh, I'm just going to increase sales." If you got crappy salespeople, you have to cater whatever it is to whatever you have, to the resources that you have available around you. But like I think so. I want to go to positive, JB. Can I go to positive, JB?
Absolutely.
Please, give us some positive.
We would like to see positive, JB. I don't think
Okay,
I've
here's
seen
positive,
it.
JB. Here's positive, JB. I'm going to mention another team. What'd you say?
I said this might be our transition out of the show because we've been at it for about over an hour.
Okay, so I'm going to mention another team that I know you guys hate me mentioning, but it's my home state team. And here's why I want to mention
Missouri.
And here's why I want to
seeing a
mention
team kind of build themselves.
You know how you guys want the coordinator from UNLV? His head coach is Odom. Okay, Odom coached at Mizzou, right? So Odom was here, and they went 7-6, and then went 4-8. He got fired. And they hired Eli Drinkwitz, right? So he didn't have as much as Fick had. He had less, right? He went 6-6 his first year. He went 5-5 his second year. He went 6-7 his third year. And last year he went 11-2, won the Cotton Bowl, and beat OSU. It took 4 years. Yeah. And it all started, and they put 6 guys in the NFL last year, and all 6 guys were 3-star recruits. So if you coach guys right and you develop them right and you actually can evaluate the talent, you can actually say, dude, this guy, he might like Lucas. It's criminal that Lucas isn't a 5-star, right? I mean, you can just look at that and see that guy, or at least a high 4-star. How the hell is he a 3-star, right? With everything, his offer list, everything, right? That's the guy you got to go out and get, and you got to develop him into what you need him to be. And so, I know Ryan and I disagree about this. I think Justin and I do too. I always say that cornerbacks are the most important guys on the defense. It's harder to get good defensive linemen. They're rarer. But as far as importance, it's cornerbacks. Because here's what happens. If you have a great defensive line, but a crappy defensive backs, right, all they're going to do is just dump the ball off. They can throw quick routes. It still takes 3 seconds to get to the quarterback. If they have a good enough quarterback, they'll throw it out into the flat. They'll throw a quick route, whatever, in the seam or whatever. So if you have great cornerbacks and they actually can cover guys one-on-one for 4 seconds, your DBs can get just a competent DB can get back there. And if not, because you got guys that can cover one-on-one coverage, you now have you can blitz and you can create pressure. And so what Mizzou did was they got 2 cornerbacks, Chris Abrams-Drain and Ennis Rakestraw. Both of them got drafted in the first 3 rounds last year, both of them 3-stars. And I look at Agard and Lucas, I'm thinking, are maybe those guys. And so, and if you look at the amount of cornerbacks that we brought in, and sometimes you want, shorter, faster guys, sometimes you want longer guys, depends on if they're playing in the slot or they're playing outside. But if you, we got Harper, we got Dunn. I have a whole list here. Snowden, Declona, Tisdale, Arnold, Braden Moore. He's super, super fast, right? Justin Taylor. We got Jameer Scott and Demir Washington, Remington Moss, all coming in next year.
Like you need them both, though. You need the line and the secondary. You can't.
I'm not saying you don't. I know we got some guys coming in. We got some guys coming in. So what I'm saying, we got some DLs coming in, right? We've got Willer, right? We've got guys. We've got Jamel Howard. I don't know where he's at. And we've got who else we got? Dylan Johnson, right? We've got guys, right? So 2026, year 4, we've got DBs. They can shut stuff down and allow these defensive linemen to get in. If the defensive linemen can't get in, you're going to have to bring more guys up, and you're going to have to blitz and take some risks. And in 2026, we're going to be 11-2, and we're going to be in the playoffs probably, and we'll see how it goes. But it's not going to happen next year, and that sucks. But it's going to happen in 2026.
That's the part of the clip. That's the part of this video I'm going to clip, though. In 2026, we're going to be 11-2 in the playoffs. That's what I'm taking out of it. Zach, I'm going to let you bounce, man, because I got Robert in the queue. Always great to talk to you, my brother. It's great to see you. Hope you're doing good. Hope your Thanksgiving was good as well.
Yeah. All right, you guys as well. Take care.
Actually, Ryan, can we talk about the game for a second a little bit or no?
We got Robert in now.
Hey, we saw what not having a defensive line did today in the game, where he had 37 seconds every time he dropped back to back.
Oh, yeah.
That Robert and I went to the home opener together.
Dude, yeah. Rob's a great man. Rob is. I think if we were tracking live calling appearances, I'm pretty sure Rob.
He's up there on the list.
I'm up on the list.
I think he'd lead it. Rob, man, how are you doing after the game? Where are you at, by the way?
I'm at the bar I work at right now. So my last guy just left, but sometimes it gets busy around midnight. You know, we close at 2:30. So
pour me a shot.
Pour you a shot, yeah.
I'll make it a double.
But no, I threw in the comments in there. I said, I said we were going to get 7 wins this year, and you're like, what's with the negativity? What's with the negativity? And I try getting hyped, and now I've just been crushed.
Go 5-7. You could be.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for building you up. I mean, I thought we would be 8-4. That was my pick at the beginning of the year, was 8-4. So it's not like we were that far.
Fair, when we made the predictions, we actually had a quarterback too.
Yeah. And I got a YouTube clip out there talking about me saying the offense. My confidence level was a 1. So just gonna keep that one going.
You were right, by the way.
Yeah,
you were right to have it at a 1.
And
right now.
Lockton throw a lot of interceptions when he's getting the ball batted down at the line. I was spot on.
Yeah, man.
But recruiting's still going to keep me positive. Like JB said, you got to evaluate well, and then hopefully you can get in some talented guys. 2026, 11-2. Let's get it.
Yeah, I love it, guys. Any last thoughts here? We will.
I have a couple. I just had a quick couple things. I just want to know what you guys thought, and you addressed it a little bit earlier. But Yak, right? Yak comes in. He hasn't played in 5 games. Right? They bring him in, or he hasn't played he played some special teams, but he wasn't playing. They bring him in, and they throw him 2 passes. Why on earth didn't they hand him the ball?
I said that same thing in the Discord. How funny is it that you have this guy that everybody's been pining for to get carries? They bring him in and they play action. It was like they're trolling people. I
think they were.
That's how I felt. Like it was a sabotage. like in the headset, they said to Locke, "Okay, listen, man, we look bad right now.
We're totally gonna mess with that JB guy.
throw the ball behind him 4 feet and throw it at 8 miles an hour."
By a linebacker coming up.
My God. What about tight end?
Oh, go ahead.
They finally put Seagreens in, and he catches a pass. We got these other tight ends again, right? Nowakowski and whoever, they can't catch the ball. Why we're stuck.
Can I throw something out there that I thought was really strange?
Was Ashcraft in this game?
I didn't see him.
I bet you he got injured last week when he tripped over his own feet.
He was hurt last week.
Ashcraft. He got hurt.
But I thought this was weird. I'm curious if you guys had the same thought. There was the 3rd and 15 early in the game. The Badgers go 4 out. They end up throwing that kind of middle post to Nowakowski. They try to lock and thread the needle. Nowakowski almost catches it, bounces up. Why is Nowakowski running a middle post on 3rd and 17? Why is that not another receiver?
I don't know.
Like, why is Nowakowski Like, why don't have 4 receivers in that situation? Nowakowski's not the guy that's going to get 17 yards down the seam. Like,
we're calling plays by committee.
I don't know.
What do you think? Hey, let's do some Nowakowski.
Let him wanted him out there. You know, he trusted him. That was a trusted guy.
Like,
Seniors.
Why are you going there on 3rd and 17? Like, put it 4 receivers. I don't understand that stuff. I don't know, man.
Some of the play calling today was a little.
I have a question. Do you think they were still running Longo's system, or were they modifying
they're absolutely
it?
still running his system.
It's exactly the same.
You don't mess. You might add a wrinkle here and there, but for the most part,
then why did they fire him?
Chris Brooks catches that.
Why wouldn't you just keep him until the end of the season?
I think they want to get it.
I think there were enough other issues associated with it. My guess is there's probably some toxicity inside the staff.
Like he had bad breath or something, or what?
I would guess that there's some very much hardcore arguing that was going on in behind the doors. And
I think it was that bad.
I think we're gonna wrap this because now we're getting to an hour. We're almost to an hour 30.
Yeah.
Wait a second. One other thing. Gasser. Josh Gasser. He is not a role player, and he agreed with JB. Success is determined by the tournament.
Yeah, he did agree with that. He's still he can be a great role player. That's not a disservice to call somebody a great role player. I love Josh. Guys, where are you at? Is Josh Gasser, would he fit your definition of a role player or not?
I think he is, because I don't think that he's a focal point. But I think he could have been more than that. I just think that team was so stacked it didn't matter. He got relegated to role player simply because you had 3 NBA guys on that team?
Yeah.
Or four.
I mean, when the guys top 3 in scoring on the team,
and 2 guys that were training camp fodder.
He's a good role player. Is not a compliment.
It is a compliment. A good role player.
It is. Well, you could say he's a great role player. He had a role and he played it,
Before his knee injury, he would have been a focal point of the team. Like, other guys filled in while he was out for that year, and that's where the team grew. So he didn't have to take on that responsibility anymore.
He averaged over 30 minutes a game and has more wins than any other Badger in history.
Yep.
Nobody's saying he's not good
than any other quarterback.
That's like saying he's the best quarterback in
saying he's a good role player is like asking, is she pretty? And you're like, well, she has a nice smile. No, but is she pretty?
What's
She's got a great personality. She's got a great personality. No, but is she? Come on, man.
Great role player, not good. I said great role player, elite role player. Like he's a great role player. He's also a guy in the national championship game that scored 0 points. Like it's a role player.
And I legitimately said on that team that I thought he had the cleanest looking shot of anybody on that team. Like, I love his jump shot. It should be a teaching tape for every guy that's playing on this team now. He shot like 45% from 3.
Anyway, this corner of the screen. Yeah. This corner of the screen is pro Gasser, and you're not going to change my mind.
Yeah,
I'm
pro
Gasser.
Nobody's negative on him.
All right,
we all thought he was really good.
Yeah. It is an hour and 23 minutes into this. We did get a comment here that someone said, "What is wrong with the long show?" I record in my basement right now while I'm building my office. You guys may not be able to tell I've been shivering for the last 20 minutes.
He doesn't have his fire anymore.
I'll man your space heater.
So that's part of it. And I also don't want to keep people for crazy long. Like I've looped Justin and did this whole one. But as always, guys, let's go round the table. Any last thoughts? JB, keep it to you. Then we'll go Justin. Then we'll go Rob. Then we'll finish here. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bad season. I think we're going to be good in a couple years. I think Fickell is probably a good manager, which is what the team needs. The team needs a guy who can get the right pieces in place. He may not be the best X's and O guy or the best whatever, but if you can assemble the right guys, I think the future is bright. I was wrong about Tanjay.
I think we all were.
And the team looks good. And I'm excited about basketball coming up. And I hope to come up for a game. I hope you do a meetup, Brian, because I like to meet up with all you guys for a basketball game. So that's pretty much what I have to say on Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an extremely interesting offseason. The coaching hires they're obviously going to bring optimism because no matter what, people are going to want to have hope. But a lot's going to really come down to, in my opinion, the staff needs to really be simple in what they want to accomplish, and that's get back to brass tacks and just get the fundamentals down. Line play's got to get better, cleaner in general. You've got to do everything better from the run game standpoint and then build off of that to the point where the passing game, I don't want it to be Paul Chris. We're going to run 57 times in our preseason game, but you need to find something you can hang your hat on, and the run game should be that. And the athleticism on the offensive line is going to get a lot better. On the defensive side of the ball, for the love of God, you're going to have to do a lot of work getting these young players ready to play because you're going to have to lean on some really young guys on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Would you take Paul Chris if he brings Jonathan Taylor with him?
No.
No.
John Taylor's only going to be here for a couple of years. Then you're back to where you were. No.
Yeah, he's almost 30 now.
Yeah, you got to move forward. Rob, what do you think, man? Last thought.
Was he doing like a meet and greet?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, right now I would definitely go with, I'm hoping that the day is darkest before the dawn right now. Waiting on the OC. I think that one's going to hopefully bring the optimism. Waiting for signing day. That's like Christmas for all the crazy recruiting people out there, So, I'm hoping we get that done. Look forward to 2026. Shahan Alston, the running back, for 2026. Big guy on my list. So, I'll foolishly get excited next year again for this football team. Hopefully we make a bowl game. I'm all for the practices there. Let the young guys play. I don't care if we get blown out in it. Just let the boys play. So, and anyone in the Racine area, Double Vision Bar, first beer, shots on me.
I love it, man. Yeah. Take a bowl game if you can get it. Obviously, Justin has a good point, though. Not getting one allows you to maybe focus on the offseason a little bit more, but the practices are still, I think, more beneficial. John Graff says, if we have a building party, I'll bring the beer. If anyone wants to come over and help me finish the office, I'm all about it. I will say this. Over in his season wasn't fun, but I am looking forward to next season where I will once again, I'm sure, pick the Badgers to hit the over. This has been Locked On Badgers. A bunch of awesome dudes on this show. We got Justin on there. We got JP, Rob. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk later.
Wisconsin.